Alright guys, so in this video, I'm going to be looking at Donald Trump and the potential best case current scenario. Here as we are in early February, the first thing I'm going to be doing is looking at the polls. We did just get an update. I'm going to actually adjust this slightly, zoom it in a little bit. Well, maybe I shouldn't. I guess it's fine. We got an update, Trump +2 in a general, and that was just Trump versus Biden, and then also the whole gang with Trump +6 in terms of this one, another general, Trump +1. So recently, these are very, very good numbers for Trump. Anytime you got the popular vote this close, for context, towards the end of 2020, the final numbers, it was Biden +7.5 in terms of the popular vote. Now, he only won it by 4.5, but seeing these numbers, if you are Trump, it's obviously going to change. Right now, it does look very, very promising this day in history. So back in 2020 when Trump was the incumbent, and by the way, this was before the shutdown happened. So Trump's approval rating really wasn't that bad. The economy was good in 2020 before the shutdown. Biden was still up by 5.5. So it just goes to show you how well these Democrats poll in terms of the popular votes. And obviously, the outlook for Trump looks very promising. Of course, all of his, election stuff, the case, the racketeering case in Georgia, we know they're going to try and make that a huge deal. That's their big thing they have left, considering just how historically bad Biden's approval rating is. I believe it is the worst in history this late into a four-year presidency. Looking at per state, you can see Arizona looks good for Trump. You're not going to want to put too much stock into it, but there was a recent poll that has Trump +3. Looking at Nevada, recent poll with Trump +8. Looking at Wisconsin, certainly it's a winnable state for either candidate, but Trump, he lost it by like 0.1 back in 2020. Michigan, very big surprise with Trump up by 5. Pennsylvania, basically a tie, going to be close. North Carolina, very positive for Trump. This poll coming out on the 21st with Trump +10. And then Georgia, which is a big state for Trump to turn back if he wants to win. And this one does have Trump solidly up with a few recent polls here in 2024. All the recent polls, Trump is up by 8 points in terms of some of those swing states. So you can see Trump a very good chance to win a lot of these swing states. And we do have the map right here. I'm going to fill out the entire thing. Donald Trump's best case scenario. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the states that I don't think there's any way that Trump can win pretty much under any circumstances, outside of maybe something happening with Biden's health where Kamala Harris has to step in, because if it is Kamala Harris, I could see Trump with over 400 electoral votes, depending. But when you're looking at these states out west, I just don't see it. I don't see there's any way, based off of voter demographics in 2024, they're not going to swing far enough to enable Trump to win Washington or Oregon. There's very limited polling out of these states, but Biden winning both of these comfortably, Hillary Clinton winning both of these comfortably. They're liberal states. And outside of something crazy happening, you can say, well, Oregon, parts of it is at least on the eastern side, they actually want to leave Oregon and join Idaho because they're conservative. But in general, when you talk about the bigger cities like Portland, Eugene, they're going to be very liberal. So California also has to go to Biden, obviously. Hawaii has to go to Biden no matter what. New Mexico, I think, no matter what, is going to go to Biden personally. This is a Trump best case scenario, but I still will give Biden some of these states because it's got to be at least semi-realistic. Illinois as well. And then pretty much all of these dimple states are all massive blowouts every single time for the Democrat outside of New Hampshire. New Hampshire is normally a toss-up. And then all of these, other states, I guess we'll just fill it out like this as we go, with Trump winning all the normal states you would expect him to win. Obviously, in a best-case scenario, he's going to take Arizona and Nevada. He's favorited right now to win both of those states anyways, barely losing Arizona back in 2020 by like less than a point, barely losing Nevada as well. Colorado's an interesting one. So, the polling out of Colorado is like Biden +9. But I do think in a best-case scenario for Trump, he would carry the state of Colorado. I know it's almost unbelievable with, Denver and the major cities, Boulder. How could Trump, a Republican, win those? I think it's possible. If Biden's only up by 8 or 9 right now, let's say something crazy happens, he could possibly win that state as well, especially with Biden's horrible approval rating. He's going to sweep all of these states. Obviously, this is a Trump best case scenario. He's going to take Minnesota. So Minnesota is another one I would say right now I would give Trump probably about a 20% chance to win. It's definitely higher than Colorado. Colorado's probably around a 10%, but Minnesota, you know, the recent polls I've seen, it's Biden +4, Biden +3. Not that that's necessarily reflective. I mean, when you talk about election night, you know, I would expect Biden to win Minnesota. It's certainly more liberal than other battleground states. I wouldn't really consider it a battleground state, but if Trump could make it a battleground state, it would just make Biden's situation even worse with, you know, states like Florida and Ohio pretty much already conservative. These were states, go back to 2016, both of them, you know, the dialogue surrounding Ohio and Florida going into election night in 2016 was that Hillary was going to win both of those states. And one of the biggest shocks on election night was Trump carrying Ohio, not only carrying it, but winning it by about 8 points. And then in 2020, one of the bigger shocks that kind of got forgotten about because I guess at this point it doesn't matter considering conservatives control Florida, but Trump actually won Florida by 3.5 points when everyone thought it was going to be the closest state or one of the closest states of the entire election. Obviously, in a best case scenario, he's sweeping the Rust Belt. You know, the Michigan polls are promising for him. Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are virtual toss-ups. They're all going to be toss-ups, let's be honest. Iowa is not a swing state. Trump's going to take that. SEC country, Georgia, obviously, in a best case scenario, Trump will take that. South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia. Virginia, I would say, in a best case scenario, if you go back to 2021 and Glenn Youngkin's approval rating. Now, I will say there's a big difference between the appeal of Glenn Youngkin and the appeal of Trump. Virginia is a more liberal state. I don't think they're going to vote for Trump, but the opening is there with a Republican winning in 2021. I don't think I can do it with New York. I know there's been a few polls with Trump only down 9 points there. It is a best case scenario. You know, you could say, well, maybe. I just don't think I can do it. And then I'm going to give Trump all of Maine, so sweeping it, because most of those are toss-ups anyways, and then also taking New Hampshire as well. So I would say this is about a best case scenario for Donald Trump. Getting to 400, it would require some pretty crazy stuff. Really, I think mainly it would be one of these two states, maybe like Washington turning red, and then also New York possibly as well. He still wouldn't even be at 400, but this is kind of what it would look like, I would say, if Trump absolutely trounced Biden, or if you have a situation where, and I don't think this would happen in terms of strategy, the only way this would happen is if Biden seriously has some type of medical emergency where he can't run. Like, let's say it's July or August, and it comes out that Biden is totally declined. I mean, we already know he's declined, but let's just say he can't talk because they're going to have to wheel him out for these presidential debates. He's not going to be able to use the COVID excuse like back in 2020 when he only debated Trump twice. If he can't go, like if he can't formulate words, they're going to have to remove him or at least push him to the side and say his health is so bad. And it's going to have to be Kamala Harris, who I think is even going to be more unlikable, and it's going to be an even bigger trouncing than if Biden were running, because at least Biden has the incumbent advantage. Kamala Harris, being the vice president, is just completely dead in the water at this point, and her approval rating is even worse than Biden's. So that is where we stand. I do wonder if, let's see, latest polls. This is an interesting, this little scorecard. So you can see normally polls, most of the polls that they do through Real Clear Politics, 2014 to 2022, they favor Democrats. I'm actually surprised it's not all favoring Democrats. Quinnipiac University, 80%. Dude, come on. That's got to be 100%, man. That's crazy. But here's another thing. Favorability, Trump versus Biden. Biden -15, Trump -13. So even Trump, Kamala Harris is down to -19. Wow. I didn't realize Kamala Harris was this low at this point. So she's fallen. Well, they really haven't done many polls on her. But yeah, she's fallen even further, -25 in some of these polls. Even CNN admitting they did a poll -20. So if Kamala Harris actually, with a -19 approval rating, there is no way that Kamala Harris, they would have to pass her up. There's just no way that they would choose her. I mean, I don't know how you pass her up, though. I'm trying to go to Trump. I hate how they do this. So this is another thing that's dumb. Real Clear Politics improved their polling things, and I think this looks worse than the other one. It just looks dumb, but you can see Trump, not a great approval rating. It doesn't surprise me at all, considering how divisive he is. He was actually a little bit better early on, and it's kind of gone here, but Trump's approval rating, as long as it stays around like -12, it's not a big deal for Trump. So we will see what happens in terms of the election, but I think best case scenario is, honestly, it would be like Trump around 350. I think that's best case scenario what he can get to. A lot of these states, unless it's like a Kamala Harris thing, it might be a bloodbath with Kamala Harris. With Kamala Harris, it's getting really bad with Kamala Harris.